Hello and welcome to Viewers on News. I'm Jawad Tehami. Pakistan's economy has been facing immense challenges recently, and these challenges have been increased because of the devastation which has been caused by the recent floods which were induced by climate change. There had been repeated calls by the international community, especially when we talk about the United Nations, of debt restructuring or debt swaps. And there had been two flash appeals by the United Nations in order to deal with the relief and rehabilitation efforts here in Pakistan in the flood affected areas. And the initial appeal was of $160 million. And the pledges by the international community was made of around $180 million. Then another flash appeal by the United Nations was made that was of $816 million. But a recent report by the United Nations says that there is a huge gap between the pledges which have been made by the international community and also that amount which has so far been received in this regard, that is around $90 million. At the same time, the international credit rating agency Moody's has downgraded Pakistan's credit rating from B3 to CAA1, and also has raised certain concerns regarding the debt burden on Pakistan's economy. And then we saw there was a decision by the OPEC Plus to cut the oil internationally, and the global oil prices are also on the rise, which would definitely have an impact in Pakistan. And Pakistani authorities, amid the political uncertainty and heightened political temperature within the country, has also been trying its utmost in order to put the economy back on the right track, with immense challenges ahead. And there have been repeated calls by the authorities to the international community to come to the fore in order to help Pakistan out from these economic challenges as well. There are loads and loads of challenges Pakistan is facing at the moment on the economic front, but at the same time there is good news for Pakistan and the likelihood of Pakistan exiting from the grey list in this particular week. Pakistan was put on the FATF grey list, a grey list that includes the countries on which there is an enhanced monitoring regarding the international standards which have been set by Financial Action Task Force. And there were 27 points which were given to Pakistan to be met back in June 2018. And those 27 points were then raised to 34 points. In this particular year, we saw in the plenary meeting in June 2022, we saw the plenary meeting declared Pakistan largely compliant with the 38 recommendations out of 40 recommendations which were made by Financial Action Task Force. Now, Finance Minister Sardar is in the US. He had been having the meetings with the World Bank officials and the IMF officials, and he is very optimistic that Pakistan will be exiting this grey list of Financial Action Task Force. And he has also at the same time urged the International Monetary Fund to tailor its programs, taking in consideration the kind of challenges, the socio-economic and the political challenges for the countries like Pakistan, which they are facing because of the climate-induced calamities. So we'll be discussing all these aspects, and we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Abdullah Yusuf, former chairman, Federal Board of Revenue. So thank you very much for your time at Views on News. We really appreciate that. And we are also honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Tauseef Zaman, who is former president, Islamabad Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Zaman, thank you very much for your time at Views on News also. So let's begin the discussion with you, Mr. Yusuf. There are a number of challenges for Pakistan as far as the stabilizing economy is concerned. They had been downgraded by Moody's, and there is a huge debt burden for Pakistan. And Pakistan had been paying, for example, if we talk especially during this year, Pakistan has paid around $15 billion in terms of debt servicing, external debt servicing. So how do you think, amid these challenging times when there is political temperature that is also increased, what sort of measures, already we have seen there are certain measures being taken by finance minister, and the value of rupee against the dollar has increased also. He cut down the petroleum products prices. What else needs to be done at this crucial time?
Thank you. Now, you see, as you rightly pointed out, we are going through a very, very critical and a difficult time. And that is not just for our country, it is also happening, unfortunately, globally. And we are having to face a lot of issues as a result of that. Now, you see, on one side, we have this fiscal deficit, then we have the trade deficit, and then, of course, the debt that has been increasing as we go along. We are having to, in my view, what we need, number one, is how are we going to manage our ongoing fiscal deficit and increasing the debt as a result of it. In my view, the best way forward is to go for substantial increase in your revenue base. And that will get you the extra revenues which are supposed to be there, but unfortunately, due to cash economy, non-documented economy, we are not able to reach out to them, those potential taxpayers. And the right way forward, and that is a globally accepted as a system, is systematization through automation. And when you are going to identify the CNIC number and get all input from third party sources, and when then you are going to confront that person, how can he deny? So he will have to come onto the net.
So as you are of the view, so tax collection remains to be the core issue
at the moment,
as far as the revenue increment is concerned.
Absolutely. At the moment, that is your number one issue, and you have to really focus on this matter to try and mobilize those potential resources. You do have the potential, but then because, as I said, of this problem of cash economy.
So Mr. Yusuf, if you increase the tax net here in Pakistan, reaching out to all those people who can contribute to that net, there is a concern by Moody's when it downgraded Pakistan's credit rating from B3 to CAA1 that interest payments regarding external debt servicing are so huge that the half of the government's revenue this fiscal year went up from 40%. So even if you generate revenue and collect the tax on a broader scale, so a huge chunk of that is going to go in debt servicing.
Of course, you see, that is our number one expenditure today is your debt servicing, the interest charges. And that is a very major cost, right? Now the question is, how are we going to reduce that? Unless and until our debt is going to come down, how are you going to reduce the interest charges? So right. That is why I am saying that you have to focus on this matter, that your debt is not going to keep going up.
Right.
And then on the side of your expenditure, as I said, interest charges is number one, then your defense comes the number two main expenditure, and then all the other expenses.
The percentage of debt servicing during this year's annual budget was increased from 35 to 46% as well.
Yes.
So there's almost half the chunk of the annual budget.
Yes.
Okay, let's take Mr. Zaman's view regarding this particular thing. When you increase the revenue base, but the percentage of debt servicing is so huge, no matter how many sources of increasing your revenue are made, you're going to pay a huge significant amount when it comes to debt servicing. How can we cope that one?
If we look back historically in Pakistan, right from the times of the Ayyubs, then the Musharraf, and now this is the third time when we were going for throwing away with our debt trap. What we were looking at it, our GDP was increasing, our tax net was increasing. We saw that unprecedented revenue coming from overseas Pakistanis. There was a lot of projects in textile sector, they were coming up in a big way. So with all that, what was happening, suddenly there was a change in government, And now we see that all the indicators which were going up they fall down on the ground. We really need to look at 3-4 areas primarily. One, why and how we apply and get international loans. There should be a transparent system of applying for a loan and getting the loan. People just come to know that they have to do the debt servicing. But why that debt servicing was required? Because somebody took the loan. And why he took the loan? Is he answerable? Why he took the loan? And what was the reason of getting, was it beneficial? Was it a productive one, or that's expenditure only? The world, right from Malaysia to all over, the successful investment model is BOT, where no cost of loans are getting to the economy. It is not costing to the economy. Then we see that right from oil and gas sector, there were so many interesting developments took place by OGDCL, and then it just went away hush-hush. It is very true that Mr. Abdullah Yusuf's time, he increased definitely the revenue in tax collection, and that was due to trusting the business community, self-assessment and all that. But it was a bad news for a bureaucracy actually, that they were able to, the business community they were adding tax to the tax checker. Now this is the time again, then we have to revisit the whole scenario where there was economic zones has to come in, all over. I was working in Kyrgyzstan. There's a 2 rupee for electricity unit, right? You go and lease the land, 2 years you don't have to pay any lease rental, and if at all you have to pay lease in the long run, that is $1 a yard, and that is it. Go invest and they give you 100% Russian market.
So, Mr. Zaman, as you already mentioned that back in General Ayub Khan's era, there was development. It is known as the development decade in the history of Pakistan. Then we saw the growth rate touching around 7%. It was repeated back in General Ziaul Haq's period as well. And then a similar sort of a situation we saw happening during General Musharraf's period. But many experts are of the view it was because of assistance coming from the external sources, primarily Pakistan becoming the frontline ally in the major endeavors in the campaigns of the United States.
What I look at it in last scenario, immediate past, there are 100% domestic investment of about 1600 billion rupees coming into textile sector in recent past, this financial year. Right, so that is 100% domestic investment.
Right.
It had nothing to do with foreign aid.
Yeah.
If you look at the BOI's figure, there are 99% investments are domestic investments, and there is no
why
special
not foreign direct investment when we talk about increasing Pakistan's exports? So do you think only the indigenous investments are sufficient to meet the challenges, or should there be a flow of capital from outside Pakistan in terms of foreign direct investment?
What is happening is that we must recognize the domestic investors. If you go to BOI, there's not a single desk for a domestic investor. Those who are putting up their money, right? And we are, if you ask about CPAC, and CPAC, the fact on the ground is, if you talk to the bankers, there's about $5 to $6 billion which routed through the banks. So there are we say there's about $56 billion investments are here, might be there. So, I'm not against foreign investments, but we have to take care of our own interests. We have a vibrant local economy, we have local sizable youngsters, we have our own agriculture growth. So I don't know why we are so fan of getting foreign investments in Pakistan, where we are young enough, we are talented enough, wherever we try to achieve the things, we do achieve that. It is people laugh at us. You are the atomic
foreign
power.
direct investment naturally increases the foreign exchange reserves.
You are the atomic power, and you are short on energy.
So, Mr. Yusuf, when we talk about one of the huge chunk of Pakistan's expenditures, it goes in getting the oil from abroad also. Import bill, specifically when we talk about the fiscal year 2022, it increased to $17.03 billion as compared to $8.69 billion during the same period last year. So that is a huge phenomenal chunk that is also burdening the economy. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you see, this oil price is an issue which is a global price which has been going up, and that of course is affecting us because we are importing all this from abroad, and if you are going to have a higher price for the same product that you are getting, so you will have to pay more.
So what's the alternative?
Alternatives are not easy. You see, the thing is that you are supposed to have certain things to be able to meet certain requirements. Now, oil is one of those things that you are supposed to see that whatever is your requirement, you will be needing it and you will be importing it. Now, the thing is that if you think that you will be able to reduce the consumption of oil, now that would mean that you will have to plan whatever it is so that it really comes down to that level, which is I would say practically not an easy task to be able to achieve that.
There is any possibility it could be reduced because there is a rising demand with every passing year?
Yeah, yeah, that is certainly the case. So the thing is that all this expenditure side is a big issue also. Revenue is one, expenditure is the other, and as I mentioned, interest is your number one issue. So you have to look at your debt position so that you are able to reduce your interest charges going forward, and similarly all your other admin cost, you have to see what you can do. Now, for instance, one of the previous government, I would suggest tell you that there was an austerity committee, and they were supposed to look at this issue of the expenditure side and see what can be done to reduce that cost. So I happened to be there on that committee and we recommended that, look, you have at the moment 42 ministries, you can reduce them by half and bring them down to 21, and it will reduce so much of your expenditure, but there will be no practical problem to actually manage.
Is it considerable enough if that is reduced?
Of course, it is quite a substantial saving, I would say cost saving. Now, when the proposal went to the PM, he said, yes, it is a good idea, but the thing is, how will we manage those 21 ministers that we are going to remove? So
there is a political side to this particular thing.
We are living in a political economy.
So, Mr. Zaman, what's your take regarding the importing of oil from abroad?
How I feel is that oil is such a thing which moves the economy. That is fuel to the economy. Important thing is so on the one side, it brings strength. You are importing fuel. It means you have to look at your auto policy. It should have an economy which should be, automobile is the mother of economy again. I am of point of view, let them manufacture the automobile sector and let them manufacture in Pakistan and cut down the duties on the automobiles. Add that revenue into the fuel bill, that is all right. If our auto sector moves, that is lot of activity. There are over 100 million motorcycles on the road. They need to graduate. There's an EV which is coming in. So it is how we are taking that ride of energy. I feel that energy price, if energy we are importing, we are energy consumers. It's a strength. We need to build on that rather, getting it on top of us. So we need economic zones. We need agriculture development.
Mr. Zaman, and let's specifically for now talk about the energy crisis that is prevalent all around the world, as well as vis-a-vis the
again, it's a political issue.
Russian and Ukraine conflict. Now, there has been a decision by OPEC Plus to cut production also, right? That definitely increases the global oil prices
that's a political,
as well.
Again, political decisions. We are living in a political economies. So, one political decision which we have to make is that either we should take care of our foreign policy, or we need to take care of our people and our economy. If we have a strong economy, it supports our foreign policy. You know,
on this front, the challenge is not only faced by Pakistan; it is for the bigger economies as well, including Japan.
I'm not talking about Japan. I'm talking
as
about
well.
next
For the first time in UK, they are going to have the supply cuts during this winter, and Japan is going back to the nuclear energy once they made a pledge that we are going to shore it off.
Let me tell you something. Not far away, in October last year, there was a coal pledge signed by 20 economies of the world that we would not encourage investments in coal sector. Right? With this Ukraine fiasco, Germany said, forget it. We need to take care of our people. We'll go for the coal activity. Our next door, you know, India, they are importing fuel from Russia at this point of time when they are the blue-eyed for US. Not only that, they are importing, refining and re-exporting, making money of importing from Russian oil and moving on. So, whosoever is sitting in foreign office, they have to take, or whosoever is blowing the whistle. They have to take care of
Mr. Zaman, we regularly see after 15 every fortnightly there is a review of the prices in the petroleum products in Pakistan. This time around it was not carried out, and the prices remain to be the same, and they are going to be reviewed at the end of this month. Now, what do you think? What made the government stick around with the same prices? Is it because of the global pressure and the global oil crisis that is?
What is happening? This is again a very interesting question. We need to go back to what is happening in oil sector. In Pakistan, do you know the refineries are working on 50% capacity? Do you know that we have the only storage of 3 months available in Pakistan? Why we are keeping it our storage to 3 months capacity only? We have to build it on. Let it be a BOT thing. Let it be a lease rental model, anything. If we have the current pressure on forex was one of the major reasons was we were short on the capacity. So I am all out, all support, willing to bet my money that the government refineries should invest.
How can that capacity be enhanced?
They are short on space. So we don't physical storage capacity. We don't have that. So in case of any pressure, we say our reserves are coming down on oil. So it hits a signal to the oil community, and the prices goes again for Pakistan. So this is something which we really look into it, that what is the current capacity of oil available for us, so that we have a peace of mind to operate. Let it be furnace oil, and if that is not enough, our refineries, they are working on 50%. If that is not enough, they are not producing the byproducts. There are only 12 or 13 or 15 or 20 byproducts we are producing on.
Right, Mr. Zaman, your point is well taken. We are now honored to have been joined in the show by Mr. Mehtab Haider. He is senior journalist. Mr. Mehtab Haider, thank you very much for joining at Views on News. I hope that you're doing fine today.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Haider, there is a good news for Pakistan, and Finance Minister Sardar has expressed optimism that Pakistan is going to be exiting the grey list of a financial action task force. How likely is this one, and what sort of irritant do you think could be there because of India's factor this time around?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, FATF plenary meeting is scheduled to meet next week. And as you know, Pakistan has simultaneously implemented 2 actions plans, and we graduated by implementing first 27 action plan, and the second one was having 6 points. So we have completed the all action plan, and this time their team visited Pakistan last month, and their report, on the basis of their outcome, it is expected that in the next plenary meeting, which is scheduled to meet next week, Pakistan will be excluded from the grey list. So it is hoped that the sanity will be prevailed and Pakistan will be excluded. On that side of India, India is propagating against Pakistan that Pakistan had harbored terrorist activities. But as you know, we have implemented the whole action plan. There were 27 action plans, and just to remind your audience, Pakistan was placed into the grey list in 2018. And first of all, in June 2018. And afterwards, because of COVID, Pakistan had implemented all the 27 action plans. And at that time, it was unique for Pakistan that Pakistan was given the second action plan for implementing the 6 remaining points. So Pakistan had implemented both of the action plans, and now Pakistan deserves to be excluded from the grey list. And it is hoped it will be done.
Now, regarding the role of India, Pakistan's Foreign Office has categorically been saying that India is trying to politicize Financial Action Task Force, and regarding this particular thing, Pakistan would definitely give its input to the president of FATF. Now, Pakistan having achieved all the action plans and being largely compliant regarding all the 38 recommendations of FATF out of 40, so there is a huge likelihood. Do you think India factor can still play a role before the final decision by FATF is made?
They are trying to politicize this issue, and they are doing it from last 4 or 5 years. But as you know, Pakistan has largely complied the 2 plans simultaneously. And it is unique in case of Pakistan, because usually if one country has been placed by giving an action plan, it doesn't happen that it should be given the second one. But it was done in case of Pakistan. And as you know, there are so many other countries. For instance, they are not into the grey list. For instance, Afghanistan is not into the grey list, but Pakistan has been placed into the grey list. So it is hoped that the sanity will be prevailed, and India trying to politicize this issue will not be succeeded this time. And Pakistan will be excluded from the grey list this time, because it's very important that, as you know, this kind of forums which have been placed under the UN resolution, it shouldn't be used as a tool to politicize it.
Right.
And it will be done. It will be hoped that the Pakistan will be excluded from the grey list, because we have implemented all the plans.
So, Mr. Mehtab, Haider, what major challenges Pakistani authorities had to face in order to meet all those standards set by Financial Action Task Force vis-a-vis countering the terrorist financing and anti-money laundering?
As you know, Pakistan has made legislation. Pakistan has enhanced capabilities and capacity of
Unfortunately, we've lost the connection with Mr. Mehtab. Haider will try to reconnect to him. So let's talk about what sectors particularly were targeted by Pakistani authorities when it came to meeting those standards set by FATF. Mr. Yusuf, please go ahead.
You see, we have, as you know, this petroleum is the one main issue where we have to see whatever is happening is in accordance with whatever is their requirements. And then, of course, our textile sector is a very, very big issue where we are having a substantial exports in that sector. And then we have
so, Mr. Yusuf, what about this particular recent measure by Finance Minister Senator Sardar? We saw a considerable appreciation of rupee's value against the dollar. Is it sustainable for a longer run?
Well, this is again an issue which is of the whole economic activity and how we are moving forward and how we will move forward, because this the point that he has raised regarding the actual value or reasonable value of the rupee, there is a need for it to come down as compared to the dollar. So, if we are able to manage our economic activity side, definitely that will also be possible, and we should also be trying to achieve that, because that will definitely help us as far as our economy is concerned.
Right, Mr. Zaman, I'll come to you with this particular point. We are again joined by Mr. Mehtab, Haider, senior journalist. Mr. Mehtab, Haider, thank you very much for joining once again. So you were telling the key areas of the sectors which Pakistani authorities had targeted to meet those FATF standards in terms of anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing.
Yes, sorry, my line dropped. Actually, I was talking that Pakistan had made a legislation on all fronts which were required under the FATF standards and FATF requirements. Now, the prosecution and conviction, they were also improved, because once the legislation part was improved, now it was the time to implement it and implement it effectively. But there is a need that we should do hectic lobbying with different countries, especially who are part of the FATF. And because of hectic lobbying, I think now the last requirement, as we need approval and stamped approval of the plenary of the FATF, I think Pakistan will be succeeded to come out from the grey list. And we will have to ensure the world, and especially the FATF, that Pakistan had made all kind of procedures and institutional mechanism, and we will continue to adhere to all these institutions to counter terrorist financing and combating the money laundering. So we will give them a surety, we will give them a guarantee that Pakistan will continue to implement all these procedures and all these requirements of the FATF in the future as well.
Right,
So
Mr.
after giving
Mehtab, right, your point is well taken. Let's talk about overall state of Pakistan's economy. Amid the challenging political scenario that is prevalent here in Pakistan, we see the rising political polarization as well, the extremes of narrative from certain sides, also with immense challenges which are faced by Pakistan's economy, especially in the wake of the recent floods. Now, there are certain measures which are taken by the current government in order to stabilize the overall economy of Pakistan. Your take regarding those measures? We have seen a considerable appreciation of rupee's value against the dollar, primarily when Senator Sardar took over the reign of Pakistan's economy. He also cut down the price of petroleum products as well.
I think there are two major challenges facing by Pakistan's economy at the moment. As you have mentioned, the increased political polarization, that is a challenge. And on economic front, the challenge, there are two challenges. One is Pakistan is facing dollar liquidity crunch. Because, you know, without improving the dollar inflows, we will not be able to sustain this kind of exchange rate. If we want to improve our exchange rate, we will have to improve the inflows of the dollar. And second, when the dollar inflows will be improved, then it will also help to tame the inflation. Because, you know, the second challenge for this government is rising inflation. And in the aftermath of floods, as you know, the projection is that the inflation will be on rise. And there is an average inflationary projections between 23% to 25%. So it is high time that we ensure the dollar inflows. That will help to reduce inflation. And when dollar inflows will be improved, it will help to reduce inflation, because inflation is one kind of tax, which is more putting pressure, especially the poor and the fixed income groups. So these are the two major challenges facing by Pakistan's economy. And as you know, Finance Minister has recently visited to attend the annual meetings of the IMF and World Bank, and he has talked about rescheduling of non-Paris Club to the tune of $27 billion. That is part of that projections that we want to improve the dollar inflows. And that is one way to get the desired results.
Right, Mr. Mehtab, Haider, senior journalist, thank you very much for your time for being on Views on News. We really appreciate that. Mr. Yusuf, when we talk about Finance Minister's now recent statement, he has urged the IMF to tailor its programs, keeping in view the social, economic and the political challenges for the countries like Pakistan in the wake of the climate-induced calamities. Do you think after Pakistan gets an exit from the grey list, because Pakistan made a commitment towards IMF also, and at the same time Finance Minister says that Pakistan is going to complete a current IMF program, do you think there is likelihood of IMF's giving kind of a cushion for Pakistan so that it could stabilize its economy in the near future?
You see, this getting out of the FATF thing, out of the grey list, is certainly a very, very positive thing from our national point of view, and that will definitely send a very positive message also to the international agencies, the IMF, etc. And going forward, it should also help us, and there should be support also from these bodies, and I think we will be looking forward to that.
Right, Mr. Zaman, your take regarding this?
Exactly, like once the news is out that we are out of the grey list, that would give a lot of confidence to the financial sector of Pakistan and the dealers with Pakistani economy. So that is definitely a good omen. We hope that it should have happened a year ago or 6 months ago, but the good news, it is happening now. The other thing is that all these figures which Mr. Dar says that the real price of the dollar is under 200, that is exactly where our economy was propelling before the change of government. So we have to really look at it, why it went down so nosedive, and how we are recovering it back.
So Mr. Dar is of the view it is because of the speculators and they would be took to the task.
Exactly. So that is very, very important, that this has to be considered properly and without any mistakes. We have to take care of loans, the processes of loans, their debt servicing, increasing our international exposure, taking care of oil pricing and oil substitutes, and taking care of our young youth and getting money. Our IT sector is performing very well. Another area which I would like to focus, and that requires a lot of attention, that is our circular debt, the price of energy in Pakistan. That is again, previous government tried to cut down that area to work on that. There was an increase in tax to GDP ratio was improved last year. So these areas we should continuously working on that, providing assistance to the taxpayers, and that is where we feel that things should move forward.
Now, Mr. Zaman, there was a flash appeal made by the United Nations regarding the efforts of Pakistani authorities to mitigate the impact of the recent devastating floods. Now, initial appeal was of $160 million. The pledges were $180 million. Then another flash appeal was made, $860 million. Now, accumulatively, only $90 million so far have been received. There is a huge gap between the pledges made by the international community, despite United Nations Secretary General repeatedly calling that Pakistan needs assistance regarding this particular thing. Why do you think there is still a gap between the pledges and the kind of amount that has been received so far?
How I am looking at the things, Pakistani economy size is around 300 billion or more than that, right? Okay, so these amounts are petty amounts as compared to our size of economy within ourselves. We are a sizable economy. If we are able to get hold of the debt servicing for a while, if we can get rescheduled for a while, Then we work on our fiscal arrangements of getting loans and how we process them, and let's convert this disaster into opportunity by creating industries which supports all these, like there's a new kind of fertilizer available which absorbs the water, and waterlogging land can be re-fertilized, re-energized for the agriculture. So these are the technologies. If we work on that cautiously and settle down our political economy, that is far, far more important.
What exactly Pakistan needs right away? Is it the international aid for which the flash appeals have been made, or the debt restructuring right away?
Debt structuring is far more better, you know, because the kind of loan coming in, it is unplanned, it is going through NGOs, anyone is working on one sector, another one, they are trying to help rescuing it. So rescuing work is almost done. Now these are rehabilitation and reconstruction. So this is all which requires new entrepreneurs.
What about the debt swaps in order to mitigate any future challenges out of such type of climatic events happening in Pakistan?
Again,
because the idea is to install the disaster resilient infrastructure so that.
Yes.
So what about
Exactly.
that?
That is also very, very important. Important thing is that again we need to really put up our alert system, how we manage our loans, right, and how we build a disaster resilient infrastructure. Seriously, it's a matter of law. The way there were encroachments on River Sawat, and everybody was allowed, or they think that they were we were encroaching and we were encroaching. So these are the things. This is also a time to look within ourselves, what we are up to, what we have been doing. Only we know that if this happened, what is the way forward. International aids has never been historically a solution to any domestic problem.
Right. Mr. Abdullah, Yusuf, what are the options for Pakistan in case if IMF doesn't relax its conditions or doesn't give a kind of a cushion to Pakistan so that Pakistan can mitigate the impacts of climate change on one hand and stabilize the overall economy on the other?
Well, you see, as I think we have discussed this, issue is not easy. Whatever is there is a big issue as far as we are concerned. Now the thing is that on this our problem of the the weather, we think that you have to now use your whatever revenues possible to actually facilitate those people who have been affected in that area, and that will stabilize them and get them going for future. That is your real task today. And of course, it does mean certain cost also, which you will have to bear. And I don't think you have a choice really, you have to do it. And that will certainly help us.
Right. Thank you very much for being with us on Views on News. Mr. Abdullah Yusuf, former chairman FPR, and Mr. Tauseef Zaman, former president, Islamabad Chamber of Commerce and Industry. No doubt there are immense challenges Pakistan's economy is faced with. But the current government is taking measures, and it is also taking difficult decisions amid the uncertain political scenario at home also. So let's hope for the best. Whatever the measures or the difficult decisions the current government is taking in order to stabilize the overall state of Pakistan's economy, they work out not only in the immediate term, also in the longer run. With that note, we come to the end of today's Views on News. Until the next episode, take good care of yourselves.